Okay, good evening, everyone. You can have your attention. Translator services. Prior to beginning, I'd like to refer anybody who needs translator services to Miss Paula Valbuena at the podium.
Thank you, President Irvin. Buenas tardes, habla Paula Balbuena. Si necesita servicios de interpretación al español, por favor llame al 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 762-960-9391. Disculpen. Más la tecla numeral. Este es un número totalmente gratis. Nuevamente, llame al número de teléfono 1805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 762-960-391 más la tecla numeral. También puede acceder a estas instrucciones en nuestro sitio web en mcs4kids.com, dirigiéndose a la parte inferior de la página en Quick Links y haciendo clic en Board Agendas para ir a la agenda de esta noche, o si no, estaré en la parte de atrás para quien necesite servicios de interpretación. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valbuena. Call to order at 6 p.m. and roll call. Student Board Rep Dogger. Not here. Student Board Rep Gupta. Not here. Trustee Brown.
Oh, Gupta's here.
There she is.
I am present.
Welcome. Trustee Brown.
I'm here.
Trustee Daly.
Present.
Trustee Lopez.
Present.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Trustee Mejia.
Present.
Vice President Maestas.
Present.
President Irvin. I am here. Welcome, everybody. And before we get started, well, let the record reflect we have a quorum. I'm glad to see that everybody's out for a very important meeting. Just wanted to let you know, back in 2012, I was in many of your shoes in that board meeting there. And so we're doing everything in our power to be sensitive to the needs of everyone involved. So welcome to the Modesto City Schools regular board meeting of November 12th, 2024. This meeting is now called to order. Live stream statement. Good evening, everyone. This session, open session, meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available on the district's website, and the recordings will be available for viewing the day after the board meeting. And so we have a pretty large crowd here. So we recognize that we have a lot of people interested in tonight's board meeting. Thank you all for coming out this evening. If we have anyone who is viewing this meeting from our overflow room, as room becomes available, we will notify you to accommodate you over here. Thank you for your patience. Regarding public comment, MCS has provided an opportunity for the public to provide comments. It is outlined on the agenda. The public has been given an opportunity to call in and leave a voicemail, send us a comment via email, or appear in person before the board. Any public comments received via email or voicemail following the posting of the board agenda and prior to noon the day of the board meeting will not be read aloud, but have been transcribed and printed with copies provided to each board member prior to the start of the board meeting and will be available to the public. The voice and email public comments will be attached to future board meeting minutes for approval. This practice will continue until further notice. For members of the public that are interested in commenting in the future, we welcome your comments. Public comment statement. Board Bylaw 9322B. If you wish to address the board during the period for public comment on a subject not on the agenda, you must complete a public presentation request card and submit it to the board president prior to the period for public comment. If you need assistance from our translator, please indicate so on the request card. Every person who wishes to address the board, please fill out a card. You will find the cards are in the lobby. You can hand your comment card to Ms. Chambers in the back of the room. Ms. Chambers, wave your hand. There's Ms. Chambers in the back right there. I also want to remind you, if you wish to make a complaint against a specific district employee, you should follow the district's personnel complaint procedure. Copies of that procedure are available in the lobby, as are agenda copies, which outline the procedures we will observe during the period for public comment. The right to address the board does not exempt the speaker from any potential liability for defamation. If you plan to speak on a topic, please fill out a card now, as no cards will be accepted after the period for public comment has begun. The maximum time for any one speaker is 3 minutes for a total of 30 minutes. For those of you requesting translation services, an additional minute will be added to your comment. In the event that we have more speakers than our 30-minute allotment allows for, we may decide to shorten the individual speaker time limit and or extend the total amount of time for public comments to accommodate more speakers. This will be decided based on the number of comment cards received. So that brings us to our Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Are there any veterans in the audience there? Any veterans? Veterans. Thank you for your service. Yes. Real good Veterans Day yesterday, you know. All those restaurants just love us and recognize us. So I got full yesterday. Again, thank you for your service. Next, A3, Superintendent Noguchi, welcome and announcements.
President Irvin, I'm going to pass, and I'm going to add my opening comments with the beginning of the presentation in just a minute or two.
Okay. Approval of order of discussion, A4. Do I hear a motion to approve the order of discussion items?
I motion.
It's been properly moved by Trustee Daly and properly seconded by Trustee Marks. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Period for public presentation. Board Bylaw 9322B. This takes us to the period for public presentations. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting and showing interest in our schools. Any cards? Okay.
No, this is just for items not on the agenda. So at the end of the item that you're here for, there's time for public comment.
Seeing no cards, that will take us to B1. B1, report on recommended realignment of COVID sunsetting forms. Superintendent Noguchi.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you, President Irvin, and welcome everyone here and online. I appreciate your interest in the board meeting tonight, and hopefully together we can share where we're at relative to our COVID reductions that we've been talking about for the last few years. I'm going to start tonight's presentation and then turn it over to Mr. Godot. I want to be able to frame a little bit of the history before Mr. Godot gets into the specifics. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic had a significant impact on education, some of which were beneficial, while others created serious challenges. If there was a silver lining to COVID, it was the additional funds that school districts and other municipalities received to help mitigate the consequences of COVID-19. However, these dollars did come at a cost, and we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. There's a golden rule in school finance, and that is dictated 30 years of my service: you never spend one-time funds on people, particularly staff. And if you do, then ultimately you have to do those reductions. This isn't a mismanagement of funds, but rather it's a function of using one-time dollars for people. In MCS, we went against the golden rule of school finance, and we used one-time dollars on a lot of people. Why did we decide to do this? There's really two main reasons. One, there was an unprecedented amount of dollars, and you're going to have that outlined for you here in just a few minutes. And the second was our students urgently needed us to pivot and to innovate. I believe this was the right decision, and our recent data that we shared in October showed that we had strong student outcomes and multiple fronts that you all saw back in October. I recognize tonight's recommendations are very difficult. However, while difficult, I believe it's important to keep in mind long-term health of the school district is important. Sometimes tough decisions in the short term are necessary to sustain stability in the future. The recommendations that will be outlined tonight came through many hours of discussion and thoughtful analysis. I do believe that even with the proposed reductions, that our students will continue to benefit from the innovative programming that was developed during COVID times. Let me take a moment and outline where we are in our journey. This is the second year of a 3-year process. We used the same process last year with a few modifications. This year, we were challenged by MTA and CSEA to be more transparent in our process. And during a budget advisory in September, the leaders asked for the district to be able to share all the program analysis and all the list of programs and their dollar amounts. While I knew this information might cause confusion, and I shared that with them, I hope that sharing this information has led to more trust and transparency. What lies before us? This year, we need to reduce $11 million. Next year, another $11 million. At the last board meeting, MTA referenced one-time dollars that may be coming from Sacramento later this year. And while there is positive news coming up from Sacramento, we are living in an ever-changing landscape, and so there is no guarantee. However, should one-time dollars come from Sacramento, I would recommend these dollars be used to mitigate next year's $11 million. So if we get $4 million of one-time dollars, then we use that for next year's mitigation of that $11 million. Additionally, I believe that addressing a larger portion of the COVID dollars this year will set us up for success for next year. Additionally, every year, dollars drop to the bottom. We call that the dollars that from the end of the budget that go to the bottom line. What I will be recommending at the end of this year, any dollars that fall to the bottom line past the 5%, I'll recommend that those dollars also work to mitigate next year's $11 million. Well, I know with this approach, I believe that next year will be a much easier process than what we find ourselves in tonight. Finally, I want to emphasize how much we value and appreciate the dedicated individuals in our organization. We would not be the destination school district without our dedicated staff, and we would not have got the student outcomes that we did if it weren't for our staff. I understand tonight's recommendations are personal and will affect employees and their families in significant ways. This does not go unnoticed. I am committed to doing everything to ensure employment opportunities for those individuals that are impacted. Later tonight, Mr. Nago will present MCS Academy training program. The purpose of this academy, although in development right now, is to provide training opportunities for staff to gain certification in specific areas or advance their skills to support them in applying for other positions within the school district. I am confident that the majority of the individuals affected will have employment opportunities for next year. I want to thank you for your time, and at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Godot.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Noguchi. Good evening, Board President Irvin, trustees, Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, cabinet, members of the public, both here and watching remotely. This evening's report on recommended realignment of COVID sunsetting funds will summarize the work that began in the fall of 2023 and has continued through where we are this evening, which is to outline our Phase 2 recommendations for the realignment of these funds. I will be presenting this evening an overview of the COVID one-time funds that we've received over the last years, the process for sunsetting the COVID funds, how we collected input from our educational partners, and I'll outline those groups in the process. I'll review with you the sunsetting COVID funds guiding principles that were created and established last year as we went through Phase 1. Then I'll get into Superintendent Dr. Noguchi's recommendations to the board for Phase 2 reductions and realignments. I'll also cover some other reductions that we have worked on over the last months, knowing that the key phrase of this work is the realignment. Not all of this is a reduction. Some of it is a realignment of funds from one funding source to another to help support the work. And then I'll finish with a summary of the employee reductions. Really, it's just a chart of the impact of those reductions, as well as following up with next steps. So as we do before any presentation, we need to get ourselves centered on the why we are here. And in Modesto City Schools, our student-centered district vision is at the core of what we do. Developing, nurturing, teaching, and graduating students with the skills, knowledge, and character traits essential to thrive and contribute to society. Our work in this endeavor is driven by our dedicated and valued employees who are central to our efforts of creating college and career-ready graduates. Our district goals relative to this presentation this evening are all encompassed. Everything that we do is impacted by COVID funds and the things that we're talking about this evening, with particular emphasis on goal number 4, which is ensuring the district is fiscally and operationally sound. On this slide, you see a summary of the COVID one-time dollars that we have received. The first 4 bulleted items on this list represent the funding source and expiration date of the nearly $150 million in one-time funds MCS has received to support student outcomes and to mitigate conditions related to COVID. As we've stated over the past year plus, these one-time funds have a hard stop deadline. The ones that are crossed out, you can see, have reached the end of use window for those funds. So the process for sunsetting the funds. This process for this work was outlined last fall at our November board meeting. We knew then that we needed to make reductions in the millions of dollars. Phase 1 last year involved identifying nearly $11.5 million that would be reduced in this year's operating budget. Important to note, the Phase 1 reductions consisted primarily of tightening the belt activities, such as identifying allocations that had gone unspent. The impact was not entirely felt upon our employee groups, as we will be discussing this evening. That's a significant difference. Last year, we were also able to begin allocating extended learning opportunity program funds, referenced as ELOP, to support 912, which helped with some of this realignment work of the process. Additionally, Dr. Noguchi has challenged Cabinet to analyze our division budgets to see what we spend year in and year out and to make adjustments where possible. As mentioned previously, the process for sunsetting COVID funds As you may recall, we reviewed our COVID sunsetting process and timeline in September of this year also. Phase 2 began, sorry, I got ahead of myself. The Phase 1 process included the identification and approval of 4 guiding principles, which were presented and approved by the board in November of 2023. The approval of the guiding principles was the culmination of months of work that involved bringing our educational partners together and a development process that also involved our labor partners. Gathering and utilizing input from our educational partners has been a hallmark of Dr. Noguchi's leadership, and we've used this process of development twice for our district goals, as well as for our district motto and other initiatives that we have embarked on in Modesto City Schools. Finally, you see that our Phase 1 recommendations were approved last year in December. Now, as you may recall, we reviewed our COVID sunsetting process and timeline in September of this year, and Phase 2 began with the identification of programs for review as part of our process for identifying what's working in Modesto City Schools. We know a lot of great work to support student outcomes has been accomplished over the last several years. However, with the expiration of these one-time funds, a systematic review of our programs and resources was necessary. To be clear, the Phase 2 recommendations we will be reviewing and discussing this evening would go into effect next school year in 2025-2026. Additionally, in September and October of this year, we met with and gathered input from our educational partners. Parallel to gathering this input, district leadership was also preparing 40+ program evaluation reports. This evening, I will be reporting on the superintendent's recommendations that are grounded in the aforementioned processes. And next Monday, we will bring back the finalized recommendations for your review and approval. So the input process involved engaging with 12 different educational partners. We engaged in this process to solicit and collect input, and it can't be said enough. We sincerely appreciate all of the participants from these 12 groups that participated and engaged in providing thoughtful input to district leadership. Please note that the asterisk next to the budget advisory is to highlight that while we did not have the thought exchange input process available yet, we did review our process and asked for feedback and questions at that time. Through the budget advisory meeting, as you heard Dr. Noguchi share earlier, we heard valuable input from MTA and CSEA, and based on that feedback, we've made some decisions in the Phase 2 process that you see outlined in the packets of materials this evening. Our input process engaged a diverse group of students, staff, parents, and community over the past 2 months, and we conducted these meetings utilizing the thought exchange process to gather that feedback. As I begin reviewing the input, please note that on this slide you see bolded and asterisked items. This represents common feedback recommendations from our educational partners between 2 sets of data. So on this slide here, you see it denoted all participants excluding AOL. AOL is a reference to our Academy of Leaders group, which is our management team that has a monthly meeting. We conducted a feedback activity at that AOL meeting. So for this feedback slide, all 11 groups are included, but not the Academy of Leaders group, okay? That group, minus AOL, consists of 161 people. And on this slide, you see the input for the top 10 programs to keep. Now, this was distilled from all of the feedback from all of the groups. This slide is in alphabetical order. That is the only reason it is in the order that it is in. And again, the bolded and asterisk items are common themes between the top 10 keep lists. So you can see here that career technical education, counselors, early childhood education, and multi-tiered systems of support was a common theme between the 2 groups. This group, the 11 group, specifically also identified digital schools and one-to-one devices, dual enrollment opportunities, our English Learner Assessment Center, maintaining safe schools, mental health counseling, and promoting athletics as also top items to keep. On the next slide here, again, this is the top 10 programs recommended to keep in alphabetical order. Now, this data set includes all 12 educational partner groups, inclusive of the Academy of Leaders input. Again, you see the top 4 bolded items on both lists, as well as classroom computer replacements, mental health counseling, professional development, site administrators, STEAM, which is science, technology, enrichment, arts, and math. Engineering, thank you. That is the one thing that is not written down on my notes tonight. And student support managers. Here again, we have our next set of data, which includes top 10 lists or recommendations for reduction or elimination. This slide is exclusive or excluding the AOL group. You see here that there are, and I should point out, esports should be bolded with an asterisk. So there are actually 7 items on this list and the next that align, that are common between the two groups. Our 11 educational partner group also identified reducing or eliminating additional administrators, health services, and one-to-one devices. When we look at the all participants feedback group for reducing and eliminating, we see again those 7 common areas: board certified behavior analysts, campus supervisors, esports, TK6 computer literacy classes, G230 credit recovery, professional development, and school support managers. In addition to the 7 common themes, when the AOL input was added to the data set, then instructional coaches, curriculum coordinators, and ECE were also identified. These are our 4 guiding principles that I referenced earlier in the presentation. In considering and preparing the recommended reductions I'll review in the coming slides, we use the program evaluations to analyze program effectiveness and impact, as well as the feedback received from our educational partners to assist us in the development of tonight's Phase 2 recommendations. We then took this information and evaluated these decisions through the lens of the 4 guiding principles. I would like to highlight that central to these recommendations is the concept of keeping these decisions student-centered, which is different from the idea that decisions should be made furthest from the classroom. We need to stay focused on keeping decisions student-centered, prioritizing our core educational goals, ensuring equity and access for all students, and considering our long-term investments. Here I'll begin reviewing the recommendations. This is the first of several slides that will outline the recommendations, the rationale, and the impacts. Let me start by highlighting that this slide represents nearly $2 million in reductions or savings. None of these 4 recommendations impact students negatively. We are shifting funding sources and adjusting budgets. For example, the first item, ongoing reductions and cuts in non-personnel budgets, is part of a quarterly review process that we established last year to help us identify funds to get back into the general fund. Additionally, technology and hardware system reductions identified in the amount of $362,000 will be saved by increasing the expected lifespan of current hardware. And then with our esports, we would be shifting the funding source to our ELOP, or our extended learning opportunity program. There is no reduction in services to students with this reduction. And additionally, the mental health counseling reduction of $1 million would be offset because we've secured a $1 million grant that will maintain the same level of service but move the funding source. Again, I want to point out there would be no reduction in services to students with this move. On this slide, we begin to see recommendations that impact people, our valued employees. The first item outlines a reduction of 4 positions that have remained vacant. A reduction of a board-certified behavior analyst, a staff secretary 4, a staff secretary 2, and a bilingual community aide. Excuse me. The recommendation in reducing one of our valued IETS classified employees, whose work was grounded in what we had to do to get our entire district up and running one-to-one devices and an instructional system that had to be set up and supported at the onset of COVID. The work is shifting. Similarly, the reduction to staff of 4 central office staff in CIPD is also grounded in the idea that we needed to ramp up support during COVID. But now we need to scale back. We will still have instructional coaching support in all 4 content areas, even with the reduction of the 4 instructional coaches in ELA, 1 in ELA, 1 in math, 1 in science, and 1 in social science. Our MTSS recommendations, this recommendation is at TK6. This program is making a difference. So again, part of this process was identifying what's working, what is helping our students. And this program is making a difference and has been a priority of our board. Access for students to MTSS at TK6 is not limited by this move or by this recommendation. That will account for a reduction of 8 MTSS site coaches. Our proposed reduction of 25 paraprofessionals from our 22 school MTSS TK6 system would be accomplished by combining our at and above grade level student groups into one group instead of multiple groups next year. The first item you see here is different, I want to point out, is different than the TK6 MTSS recommendations I just covered on the previous slide. These 3 positions are not to be confused with the Hammer Time MTSS model at Johansen High School. These 3 positions have been in our system for a very long time. These positions have been supporting site-specific work, but funded at the district level. The impacted sites will have the opportunity to discuss whether or not they would want to maintain the positions through funding them through their site Title I budget allocations, should they choose to do so. As for the G230 recommendation, with the challenges of COVID, we added an additional G230 teacher at each comprehensive high school. We had 1 at each high school prior to COVID. The need for G230, though, has declined over the past 2 years, which actually resulted in us reducing Bayer's G230 staffing by 1 teacher for this year because of a lack of need for that specific program for credit recovery. We are now seeing the same conditions, namely a reduced demand for G230 as an option for credit recovery. And I do want to point out, we have other credit recovery options that are available at school sites beyond G230. So there are still credit recovery options for our students. And with the reduction of G230 teachers, we would also need to reduce G230 student records clerks that are associated with the additional COVID G230 teacher staffing. For these recommendations, I want to highlight, and if anybody here has received any Parent Square message concerning safety over the last 3 or 4 years, district safety has been and will continue to be our #1 priority, which is why we've spent the past years increasing site safety measures at our 712 sites, including additional video cameras that have been installed, perimeter fencing, and single points of entry. Our recommendation for a reduction in campus supervisors includes reducing by 17 over the next 2 years. These additional campus supervisor positions were staffed during and as a result of COVID. Next is our proposed reduction of 6 student services administrators at the 712 level. SSAs have been instrumental in supporting our work to increase graduation rates and decrease dropout rates, as well as other critical areas of focus. Our recommended reduction of 6 SSAs would still allow us to staff an SSA at 5 of our comprehensive high schools to support that work. On this slide here, we show an IETS management position. Again, another important person in this people business. However, as we begin to look at reducing central office staff that was increased during COVID, we know that there needs to be reductions. Furthermore, we have spent years developing our data systems which allow us to integrate the use of data in our work. And we no longer have as high a need for as many individuals that are actually pulling the data for people. We actually have the systems and the platforms now to do that work. Our school support managers at TK6 were important management positions added during COVID. Our recommendation is to reduce by nearly half. This would allow additional supports at our 2 largest elementary schools that don't meet the threshold for a second vice principal and to have the additional support that they need as a large elementary school. Similarly, we would continue to support our TK6 sites that have a half or no vice principal base staffing allocation. They would be supported with a SSM. As part of our budget analysis, we have also spent time looking at our system. These are 3 areas and examples of ways we are reducing and realigning our work. The intent of Creative Leadership Solutions, or CLS, coaching was to support the development of our teacher professional learning communities. Direct support and coaching of our principals, as well as those PLCs, has been supported by CLS over the past years. One of the key intentions of the CLS work has been to develop the capacity of our site principals in this regard. We will continue to support this work through our Educational Services Division, School Leadership, and CIPD. Our SWAN Math coaching contract will be supported through our MCS CIPD instructional coaches. Our coaches are ready and prepared to take up this work as they have been working with SWAN over the past several years to get us to this point. Last but certainly not least, with the reduction of our school services administrators, this would also necessitate reducing the classified support for the SSA position, which would result in a reduction of 2 FTE there. Here you see a summary of the recommendations for reductions. In the far left column, you see each employee group, classified, certificated, and management. The count is the count of total FTE by which that group would be reduced. We also list the vacancies of some of those reductions. So for example, earlier I mentioned that we would be reducing 4 positions, and those 4 positions are vacant. That's what that number would be in there. Next to that vacant column to the right, you see the total number of the group, the employment group. And then in the far right column, you see the percent decrease or the percent impact of the reductions in each of the labor groups. So for example, for the classified group, there are 54 recommended position layoffs or reductions. Out of the 2,157 current classified employees, which would be an impact of 2.5% of that employee group. Similarly, certificated staff impact would be 1.25%, and for management, it's a 6.42% impact. Looking at next steps, again, I'd like to reiterate that these are our phase 2 recommendations, and these recommendations would take effect next school year. Again, these are incredibly difficult and challenging decisions. We will conduct a similar process of program evaluations to adjust for necessary budget reductions as funds continue to expire through 2028. This process will continue. The next report you will hear this evening, as Dr. Noguchi also mentioned, will come from Classified PD Coordinator Daniel Nago, and he is going to showcase a plan to provide job training and other employment opportunities for our potentially affected employees. And then next week, we will bring back on November 18th, the recommendations for approval. We would then continue and review and analyze the Phase 3 reductions next year. And just as we did last year at the end of the recommendations, we included, examples of things that we still need to continue to analyze. Evaluating software and technology, our stipend structures, our 0.5% professional development incentive, instructional coaches, the work experience program, and and extracurricular activities are just, to name a few, of the things that we need to continue to look at and evaluate over time. With that, I will turn the microphone back over to President Irvin.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Godot. So that concludes our report. I believe we may have quite a few people from the public that would like to speak on this topic. So I can see a show of hands of those who would like to speak on this agenda item to see if we need to adjust our normal allotted time comments. So,
President Irvin,
yes.
I remember the last time we had a.
Yeah, I'm just visualizing them.
We had an issue with the order of folks coming up and talk. I know pending folks that aren't able to stand, can we get a line formed? So that way we kind of know who is still required to talk. And so if they would like to talk at this moment, they can stand up and form a line. That way we have a better management of time, and also so that we don't have folks stepping in other people's way when talking.
So if you could stand, those that are able to, those that are not able via either disability or precluded, if we could stand, and the line would begin here and then go all the way back that way to the end. And that way we can get a better understanding of how many folks are in line, so we can see how to best allocate the time, if we need more time.
Ms. Chambers, can you count the number of individuals in the line so President Irvin can make that determination?
3 minutes.
Also, if I would say that if there's anyone that is wanting to talk but can't be standing, if they can come up to the front and.
Seven, 17. Okay. So that gives us. So if we're gonna stay with 17, we'll go ahead and allow the 3 minutes. 3 minutes per thing. I understand the importance of the item, so that's what we're here for. So we got 17. We're going to recognize 17. Ms. Chambers, if you can, let know the last, our last speaker. And so we got 17 speakers, and we're going to begin with this young lady here.
Make sure this is on, right? Okay. Good evening, Board President Irvin and trustees, Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, and Cabinet. I am Valerie McAuliffe, and this is my 27th year in education, 20 in MCS. I am here this evening as a representative of secondary MTSS coaches. As a veteran coach in the district, I have experienced the evolution of our jobs and how the demand has increased while the teacher shortage continues. I could spend my time reading our resumes and job description line items, but I want to utilize this time to talk about long-term investment, as your guiding principle number 4 states. Site coaches are an investment in our teachers who impact student learning and outcomes. So I ask you, what evidence are you utilizing to drive your decisions regarding our effectiveness? We have evidence here. MCS has strategic goals through 2027. Goal 1, specifically 1.4 states, develop and refine MTSS for all students. How does that work continue if our job positions are cut when that's literally in our job title? District guidance of our positions has never been clarified or defined, and yet we are doing MTSS every day in every way possible. Goal 2, ensure all employees have access to high-quality PD. Every component of Goal 2 encompasses our jobs, providing site and district level PD, supporting the instructional core, building teacher capacity, supporting educational technology. The list goes on. Goal 5, recruit, hire, train, and retain high-quality staff. We know that more and more teachers are leaving the profession. As a result, more interns are employed with no teaching experience. Site coaches play a crucial role by providing regular support, bridging district and site goals, enhancing teacher effectiveness, and collaborating with educators on a deeper level than an administrator can. What we do cannot always be measured by empirical data. But these letters, the staff you see in this room tonight, are our data. We, as site coaches, invest in our schools and our students. If you want to see how this long-term investment is doing, I implore you to read these letters and our job description list on how we support all educational partners. Come to our sites and see what we do before you make a financial decision to cut these positions. The funding was there before COVID, and it should be there now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next. Ms. Peterson.
Juan Peterson, California School Employees Association, Chapter 7, Chapter President. I'd like to speak regarding some of the items that I heard in the presentation and I had previously read. To me, it comes back over and over again, and I don't have the solution. I didn't make the decisions, I wasn't here. But the meeting that I went to that talked about the governor's budget a year ago, the company that put the conference on reiterated in that meeting that they did not recommend using COVID funds for financing employee positions. And I know that Dr. Noguchi has said that with the needs of our district, that decision was made. But now it's brought it back to a very painful point where we have to make these cuts. I would encourage that if, heaven forbid, anything like this ever happens again, that we look at, and I'm sure it was looked at, but if we can make valiant efforts to not use one-time funds to pay for employee salaries, because we're going to end up right back where we are again. One comment was made during the presentation that for the instructional technology position that was going away, was that work was going to be shifting elsewhere. That position is being taken away not due to lack of work, but due to lack of funds. So who is going to be doing that work? Who in the district does not currently work an 8-hour day that's being paid for an 8-hour day? So where is that work going to shift? I think the decision needs to be made. If we're going to eliminate position, we eliminate the work, not put it on the backs of the people who aren't being eliminated. And it was interesting, today in the new orientation meeting, there was an MTSS para that was hired today. And today, we're talking about cutting those positions. I think it's significant that, yes, we have talked about we're going to hold those positions, but I think it should have started a bit ago. In the last 10 seconds, everybody from CSCA, please stand up. The district wouldn't run without these people standing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, members of the school board, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Emily Arviso. I'm a paraprofessional at Bayer High School, and I stand before you on behalf of my father, Armando Arviso. He has worked with incredible dedication for Modesto City Schools for the last 6.5 years, pouring his heart into everything he does for this district. I want to share with you a little bit about my father because it's important for you to understand who he is beyond a title on a piece of paper. My father is more than just an employee. He is a passionate, committed professional who cares deeply about the students and the work that he does every single day. He has spent the last 2 years in his new role with Modesto City Schools, supporting teachers and students alike. He has worked on projects to amplify student voices, contributed to the esports initiative, and trained teachers on EdTech tools, directly impacting students daily. He invests time and effort into refining his skills, and the quality of his work clearly reflects the commitment that he has. But what's perhaps more important is that he is the sole financial provider for our family. I am the oldest of Armando's 5 daughters. We rely on my father's income to support our home, my mother, my sisters, and myself. He provides so that my mother can stay home and take care of my sisters, 2 of which have learning disabilities that require additional support. Losing his current position and facing a severe pay cut is not just a career setback for him, it is a hardship that will impact my entire family. I have seen firsthand the sacrifices my father has made for this job. He is a man of integrity who always puts others first, and it's painful to watch this uncertainty after all he has given to this district. His dedication deserves to be recognized, not diminished. The situation has shaken my faith in leadership. Watching my father face this demotion after all of his hard work makes me question whether dedication and passion actually matter when decisions impact people's livelihoods. I urge you to consider the real impact of your choices, not just on budgets, but on families like mine who depend on the stability and commitment of those who serve in this district. And I also want to add that my father's position, the comment that was made during the presentation, was that his position was highlighted for COVID, and it was made for the transition of COVID. But he started his position 2 years ago, post-COVID. So I don't really understand where that comes from or what that definition is describing, because his work is now, not during COVID. Thank you for your time and attention. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, President Irvin, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Noguchi, and Cabinet. My name is Monique Fernandez, and I am the Recording Secretary for CSEA Modesto 007. I'm here to express deep concern regarding the proposed layoff of our dedicated instructional technology technician position held by Armando Arviso. Since assuming this role in July 2022, Armando has been instrumental in numerous critical district initiatives. His contributions span various divisions, including student support services, such as creating engaging video content for student voices, Ask the Students, and student board reps, human resources, developing essential training materials for Laserfish, MCS induction, ESS, and AXA voiceovers, business services, producing safety content for heat illness prevention, asbestos training, and workplace safety, communications, supporting video content for graduation, new construction and bond funds, CIPD, facilitating over 100 PD trainings to staff. Cabinet, this will affect your divisions. If Armando's position is eliminated, we question who will shoulder this vital workload. A potential cost-saving solution lies within the IT department itself. The Systems and Applications Analyst position has remained vacant for months. This is a management position with high turnover the last 4 years. We urge the board to ask the district, position history. Was Armando's position created with COVID funds, or was it established in lieu of closing a computer tech position? Resource allocation. How can the district justify laying off a loyal employee while a vacant management position remains budgeted? Next steps. Who will do the work? By exploring creative solutions and prioritizing essential roles, we can safeguard the district's technological infrastructure and maintain high-quality educational services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, President Irvin, Dr. Noguchi, and Cabinet. My name is Soria Marroquin, 3rd VP for CSEA 007. Today I stand before you in regards to layoff recommendations of campus supervisors. These individuals are the backbone of our school community and ensuring safety, discipline, and supportive environment to our students. Their roles extend far beyond mere supervision. They are mentors, guides, and often the first line of support for our students facing various challenges. The decision to lay off campus supervisors is not just a financial one. It has profound implications for the well-being and security of our students. These supervisors play crucial roles in maintaining order and fostering a sense of community within our campus. They are the eyes and ears of our students, often intervening in conflicts before they actually happen or escalate, and providing and reassuring a presence that deters negative behavior. The personal connections each campus supervisor builds with students are invaluable. Many students rely on these supervisors for guidance and support, forming bonds that can significantly impact their academic lives. Removing one or two of these individuals from our campus could lead to an increase in discipline issues, as no one is monitoring the extra cameras, and they are there for use of after the fact. Fencing and single point of entry will not stop a fight, will not be there for the students. While budget constraints are a reality, we must face the cost of losing campus supervisors is high. We must explore alternative solutions that allow us to retain these essential members of our community. Let us work together and find a path forward that prioritizes the safety and well-being of students. At the end of the day, this is what will affect our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jewel Zarita. I'm speaking on behalf of MTSS paraprofessionals in Modesto City Schools. I teach my own MTSS elementary groups, as well as having an 8-year-old son who attends MTSS and is in Modesto City Schools. I'd like to start off by giving you literacy statistics on a broad spectrum of America. Recent studies show that 54% of Americans have a literacy level below 6th grade. Between 46 and 54% of American adults have an income well below the poverty level because of their inability to read. The next one hits really close to home for me. To determine how many prison beds will be needed in the future, some states base part of their projection on how well current elementary students are performing on their reading tests. Now, to look at more localized statistics having to do with Modesto. In 2023, Modesto Bee reported Modesto being ranked 5th least educated city among 150 cities. In 2020, 9% of students tested at or above the proficient reading level. Fast forward 3 years, in 2023, that percentage jumps to 33%. I'm going to say that again. It went from 9% to 33%. Call me biased, but I believe that has a ton to do with the MTSS program and the paraprofessionals that teach it. Though MTSS program itself is not at stake, reducing the number of MTSS paraprofessionals is, and it would take a drastic toll on any and all MTSS programs. Keeping the number of MTSS pairs would only benefit Modesto City Schools' education reading scores. You'd be able to have smaller groups, which would then lead to pairs being able to give their lower performing readers more attention. All in all, I believe we should not downsize when it comes to Modesto City Schools MTSS paraprofessionals. I'd like to leave you with this quote. Marcy Craig Post, Executive Director of International Literacy Association, says, and I quote, "We know that literacy helps the people escape the bonds of poverty and live longer. We know that people who are literate are more inclined to vote, take part in their community, and seek medical help for themselves and their families." Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Hickman. I am a 5th grade teacher at Beard Elementary. My wonder is, as you continue to take away the staff members who show up for our students and support fellow teachers, who are we supposed to call? Is it one of you on the board? I know how we all love data, and when it comes down to crunch time, I need help assessing my last few students. Who do I call? Is it you? When I have new students who don't even know their name or what a pencil is called, will you come help me teach them the basic language skills that I get that kind of support from MTSS? Sorry. When my students who suffer with severe anxiety and must meet with SAS or BCM or SSM to walk into the classroom each morning still shaking, who do I call? Last year, I had a 6-year-old student yell out in the middle of class how she wanted to stab herself in the heart because she was so brokenhearted over a loss of a family pet. I was able to immediately call yard duty, who was in my classroom ready to watch my class for a few moments so that I could personally walk this student to the office and have her meet with the SSM. She then got the help that she needed and is thriving today. MCS preaches how we set our students up for success, and how are we doing this by potentially taking away courses such as computer literacy or MTSS by removing staff members that know most of our students by name. While these may seem like petty problems to people who aren't in our current classroom setting for more than a few minutes at a time, they are huge moments for the everyday staff and students. Who do I call when we need help with those things?
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gracie Hickman, and I'm a senior at Gregory High School. I'm not up here today as the daughter of 2 Modesto City School employees, but a student who was on the brink of not waking up the next day. If that's not literally enough for you, how about a student who wanted to put a gun to her head and pull the trigger? The reason why I didn't, some would say, is because I got over myself or I grew up. But I would say it's because of the people on the bottom of the totem pole. The teachers, campus supervisors, and counselors who cared enough to build connections and trust with me, who all helped me navigate the feelings of self-doubt, grief, and unworthiness. So as students, those faces and hearts who are on the bottom of the totem pole being possibly cut means that students like me who connect with even just one of them wouldn't have someone to guide them. I mean, you all know statistics of what students come from drug-abusing homes, which ones have been in and out of foster care, have been abused or feel like they can't go anymore. Or do you? Or do you only know the ones who speak up on the surveys you post and ask them to fill out truthfully, hoping they do so? So I ask you to think about the ones who stay silent and say, I can do it myself. Those are the students like me who will go to a teacher, campus supervisor, or counselor who they feel comfortable with and tell them these things. So I'll leave you with these questions and statements. If you start to cut these jobs and programs, who will be there to tell students that they are important in the world and not to pull the trigger? Who will be there to sit and listen to them while they vent and get things off their chest? Will it be the managers or higher-ups who are doubled up and sit in the office downtown who aren't getting cut? Or will you just let those kids pull the trigger? Let those kids feel like they're less than the dirt beneath your feet? I mean, it's just natural selection, right? Like animals in the circle of life. But I mean, my apologies for being the one being up front and thinking 3 steps ahead. that cutting these people's jobs and programs in which save kids' lives on a daily basis is better than cutting doubled up management positions so we can build more fences around the schools and make managers' wages increase. Because fences and money save kids' lives, right? Not the faces and hearts that stop the trigger. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Noguchi, cabinet members, teachers, visiting families, and student representatives. My name is Michelle Beaton. I'm proud to have worked at Orville Wright Elementary School for 26 years. I firmly believe that all students deserve quality, data-driven reading instruction at their personal level. Pre-COVID, Modesto City Schools has supported a multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS system, founded in equity, where children have access to research-validated programs and teachers and support staff have access to ongoing coaching, enabling the most efficient and effective use of those district-adopted programs to support individual needs. This is Tier 2 of the MTSS system. It's an intervention for kids who are unable to perform at their grade level requirements. And we touch students on a daily basis in the area in which they desperately need it. During WIN time, which stands for What I Need, intensive and strategic students receive foundational language, phonemic awareness, and decoding skills. At and above grade level students receive skill development in literary analysis with the focus supporting state testing. I do not believe that they can be grouped into one group, and I'm sorry to disagree with you on that, Mr. Godot. When students receive instruction at their ability level, they do not only gain literacy skills. As their reading and writing abilities grow, students also build confidence that transfers into other academic areas. I'd like to finish by highlighting an Orville Wright MTSS success story. This student, who I know I shall not name, came to Orville Wright and to Modesto City Schools at the beginning of her 3rd grade year. She read 15 words per minute at 67% accuracy, well below highly intensive needs this child had. She was placed in Corrective Reading A, a program for non or beginning readers. She finished her 3rd grade year reading 89 words per minute at 97% accuracy. An improvement of 74 words per minute, equivalent of 2.5 years of growth in 9 short months. As a 4th grader, she's reading at 94 words correct per minute and 97% accuracy this year and continuing to grow. She's one example of the accelerated growth that students can attain in a strong MTSS program. The need is still present. At Orville Wright, it will always be present. And if this raises questions, the doors of Orville Wright are open at any time for further discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, student representatives, Superintendent Noguchi, and cabinet members. My name is Rande Harkrow, and while this is my first time speaking from this side of the table, I've sat in your seats before. I served on the Houston Unified Board for nearly 6 years, the majority of that being board president. I want to begin by expressing my deep appreciation for the time, commitment, and dedication you bring to your roles. I know firsthand how much preparation goes into each meeting and the weight of the decisions you face, especially when it comes to keeping student needs front and center while keeping the district fiscally and operationally sound. Tonight, I'm here not as a representative of Houston Unified, but with the perspective of someone who understands both sides. I'm an MTSS instructional coach at Lakewood and Rose Avenue Elementary Schools. Before you take action next week, I'd like your thoughtful consideration on the following items as you are presented with a report on recommended realignment of COVID sunsetting funds. First, I'm confident your goal is to ensure these reductions have the least impact on students. We will see the collateral damage from COVID for possibly the next 7 years. It will be important to keep additional support available to students. As indicated in the post-COVID report, MTSS not only aligns with our strategic goal number 1, but it is listed first. The recommendation of reducing MTSS support and adjusting group size will impact 11,541 students. Please consider reallocating funding for 25 paraprofessionals for continued full implementation of MTSS so students may remain appropriately placed in smaller groups. Additionally, it's not typical to take action on staff reductions in November. Given that the department budget review number 2 is next month and the governor's budget proposal will be released in January, perhaps action can be delayed to the March 15th notice date. It wouldn't be ideal to reduce staff in March either, but if the May revise turns out to be more optimistic, those notices could be rescinded. There's increasing enrollment and a healthy appropriation for economic uncertainties. So with the fiscal picture still unfolding, there are too many unknowns that could influence the district's financial standing in the near future. We all want to work in a district that embodies safety, inclusiveness, and respect. Tonight, I look forward to, well, we spoke after the presentation, and I appreciated the opportunity to learn more about your decisions. In closing, I encourage you to consider the impact on our livelihoods, our community, and our students before taking action next week. Thank you for your time and all that you do. Good evening.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Noguchi, and Cabinet. My name is Melody McGill. I am a Science Curriculum Coordinator for this district, TK through 12th. I'm here tonight speaking with a very heavy heart and a deep sorrow that there's a recommendation before you to eliminate positions that directly impact our students, their potential, and their success. Positions that support goal number 1, goal number 2, and goal number 5. I had to make a personal decision on which road to travel tonight in this presentation. In my comments, do I talk about the process where 186 voices in the survey were from management and 161 were from the community and from staff? Was it equitable? I don't know. Or I can take this opportunity to share the impact the coaches are having on students, sites, and teachers. I'd rather speak about the impact that the coaches are having. Our coaches are more than mentors. They are the catalyst, along with the teachers in the classroom, for educational growth. They work alongside teachers to provide support for all students. This support comes in many forms: assisting in the implementation of board-adopted curriculum, analyzing data, looking at engagement and instructional strategies, discussing ideas for enrichment or intervention, and sometimes just being that shoulder or that ear when there's a challenge before in the classroom. Coaches work with sites to support long-term substitutes so that the students that are in classrooms where there are long-term substitutes are also receiving a great instructional process. We've seen the results of the teamwork between the teachers and coaches with increase in the test scores in ELA and math. Social studies is working with teachers to increase literacy, implementation, ethnic studies, and adoptions. Science is hitting the dashboard. We are working very diligently with elementary school teachers to integrate science into their ELA math so that our students have an opportunity to participate in science. We work with the interns and the new teachers in oh so many ways. You talk about retaining teachers, we're there to help support them. I urge you to ask yourself, as science is hitting the dashboard, and due to the hard work of your classroom teachers, your MTSS, and your coaches, math and ELA scores are on the rise. Is now the time to eliminate these positions, or are there better choices? Thank you.
May I ask a question before the time starts, please? I have a student who was supposed to be here tonight, and he had transportation issues. He gave me a letter, and I tried to get someone to read it for me, and they declined. Could I possibly read it 90, 120 seconds, and then go on to my speech on behalf of a student?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. By the way, my name is Kelly Vaughn, better known as Kelly Blanc, Buyer High teacher, G230. Hello, my name is Zephaniah Richardson. I'm going to graduate high school because of G230. G230 gave me and lots of other people chances to graduate high school even when they had little to no hope. It's not too far into this school year yet. I'm already almost double the amount of credits earned throughout my previous years at Buyer. G230 is for students who need a second chance or just can't get through high school. I had less than 50 credits throughout my previous 2 years of high school, and it's not like I didn't try. With G230, I am successful. I'm going to get a diploma, and I can start a successful career. It's way better than the other alternatives because first, going to a new school can be extremely stressful for people. Not to mention, and I can say it for a fact, not everyone is fortunate enough to be able to get transportation to another site instead of Buyer. My last reason for why G230 should stay a program at Buyer is because of extracurricular activities like sports and other activities that Elliott or Pearson don't offer. In conclusion, taking away this program will cut the possibilities for other students' second chances for success, as well as digging them a deeper hole. Thank you for taking the time to read my letter, Zeph Richardson. All righty, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All righty. Hi again, my name is Kelly Vaughn. This is my 28th year teaching for Modesto City Schools. I love teaching, and I can tell you that I am lucky to have the position as G230 teacher at Buyer High School. I am speaking in agreement for the recommendation to keep at least one G230 classroom in each high school, but I am really opposed to the recommendation to reduce G230 by about 50% next school year. G230 is needed. My classes are comprised mostly of juniors and seniors not on pace to graduate high school on time. So this is credit recovery, where they have to dig deep, work harder, and be able to graduate on time with their peers. G230 is aligned to strategic goal number 1, specifically 1.2, to increase students being identified as prepared for college or career, and 1.4, a multi-system of support for all students. Before you can get a student who has been brutally unsuccessful in high school to work hard, you need to do a few things in G230. It's about building relationships, holding kids accountable in the smaller class size, having clear and consistent consequences, and giving them the confidence to believe that they can do it. This sustains them through hard work to finish classes and graduate with peers. I don't have time today to share the possible reasons why students come to us so low in credits, but if any of you want to have a conversation about that, a friendly conversation, please let me know. I also don't have a lot of time to talk about the success. I'm going to share just a few, and these successes, I don't think my classroom is any different than any other G230 class in the district, so we can connect the dots. Last year in the fall, I had a junior walk through the door, and he was out of district transfer. He came with 1 unit. And I have to tell you, my internal dialogue was, oh, Kelly, you're a teacher, not a magician. But I worked hard, I built those relationships, and I just poured belief into him until he had it. And I can tell you that today as a senior, he's on pace to graduate high school on time. I have 3 seniors who are ready to transfer to traditional classrooms next semester because they're on pace to graduate. They don't need G230 support anymore. And I have 3 seniors who have already been approved to graduate high school early. G230 high school is important, but there's a combination of staying at the site where they get those high school experiences that you remember, like prom, Disneyland, Senior Sunset, Senior Sunrise. They get to do all those wonderful things at the site. And what I don't understand is why we didn't look on that 4-page document. G230 at Pearson is not mentioned. Yes, it's G230, but it's not that high school experience. So I don't understand why this is not equitable. We need to look at all the G230 classrooms so we don't steal the dreams, the memories of our students at G230. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erica Mida, and I'm the MTSS coach at Wilson Elementary and Burbank Elementary. This year, my job was impacted when the district decided to not backfill positions that were vacated. I am currently split 50-50 between the two sites. I'm not here to go into the difficulties that I faced as a result of the split. Rather, I'm here to advocate the need for keeping a coach at each site. As you know, MTSS is a program that provides targeted support to our students, ensuring that every child, regardless of their needs, has the opportunity to succeed. The work of our MTSS coaches has been instrumental in helping teachers with effective intervention, tracking student progress, and providing timely support. When you invested in MTSS coaches, you were investing in the success of our students, our teachers, and our entire district. Cutting positions would be a step backward in the progress we've made. It would mean losing guidance that allows us to respond to student needs more swiftly, proactively, and efficiently. As one of 3 coaches that have been split this year, I can tell you that reducing the number of coaches will have a direct impact on student achievement. The coaching model has taken a big hit. I am only at each of my sites 2 to 3 days per week. I do not get to participate in consecutive PLCs. I am unable to effectively analyze data with teachers, sorry for my voice, and I'm unable to run through a full consecutive day coaching cycle. When I first started in this position, I was given a chart titled The Power of Coaching. This chart breaks down the effectiveness of programs. For on-the-job application with just theory alone, you're looking at 2 to 5% effectiveness. When you bring in demonstration, you bump that up to 5 to 10% effectiveness. Add in practice and feedback, you're now at about 10 to 15% effectiveness. Guess what gets you to the 80 to 90% effectiveness? Coaching. I would like to take this moment to point out that all the feedback I read on the feedback analysis regarding MTSS was positive. That's awesome. All commenters agreed that the program was working and important. While the district is planning on keeping the program, they're proposing to reduce the number of coaches, which changes the structure we have been utilizing. This in turn will impact student achievement. Please consider this impact as you make your decisions. In closing, on Friday, I was speaking to another teacher in our district about MTSS coach expectations. As a split coach, I am feeling the pressure of increased expectations. This person asked me if maybe I was doing this to myself and asked if anyone else was truly expecting my job performance to be 100% at each of my sites. Well, maybe I am doing this to myself, but there is one interested party that deserves it for a coach to be able to give 100% at each site, and that's our students. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Noguchi and cabinet. My name is Kathy Presley. I am a longtime teacher at Shackelford. Last year, when this board approved the guiding principles for the sunsetting of COVID funds, I was hopeful that we would take a thoughtful, comprehensive, and data-driven approach to the process. Unfortunately, we missed a critical opportunity to gather more comprehensive input by not surveying all of our stakeholders. Why didn't we survey the voices of all the stakeholders and all of the educators, those at school sites, those in classrooms, and those who work directly with students every day? Why survey high school students about MTSS intervention, computers, or prep in elementary? Ask us instead. Ask us what impacts student well-being, student learning, student outcomes, English learners, inclusive practices with our most vulnerable population of students. We have some incredibly educated and talented staff who do this every single day. Let's talk about the biggest group surveyed, 53% of those surveyed were from management. That's 185 members of our Academy of Leaders. For those who don't know, those are classified and certificated managers and administrators, many who have not stepped into a classroom. Looking deeper at the data, with those who were surveyed and their association with specific sites, elementary sites only represented 1 to 3%, and the majority of those were managers or administrators at each site. District office was 24%. Teachers were never asked to participate. There's no doubt if we had surveyed all stakeholders or even an equitable cross-section, the top recommendations for program reductions and continuations would look quite different tonight. Was this process really the most thoughtful, comprehensive, and data-driven process possible? I argue it was not. I came here tonight to talk about the impacts to my classroom and those across the district. The reductions and cuts proposed will have a negative impact on all of our students. I urge you to reconsider the proposed cuts. These cuts threaten to reverse the gains we've made and undermine the critical supports that are essential for students. What's the rush? Ask the hard questions. Take action to support our students as our elected board members. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm lucky she was my height. I am tall, okay? Just not as tall. Okay, my name is Ruth Knoll. I am the Health Science Medical Careers Teacher, CTE, at Elliott. Now, I've been at a traditional high school prior, and that program was cut, and I was moved to Elliott some time ago, a few years ago. And it was quite a change. So have a view from different aspects. But I do appreciate that you do see the value of CTE and what it brings to our students and for career readiness. However, when I see that you're looking at possibly cutting WEX programs, they are closely tied to CTE. They are a part of us because they take what we're teaching and implementing for those career readiness and help them apply it when they have a true job. So that needs to be there for those students. The paraprofessionals that are looking to be cut, that is just a shame because they help the teachers at all levels. They help make those connections with the students. And if we're going to be in a place where we are building relationships with our students, we need the help of those paraprofessionals because not everybody can say the same thing. In the same way that we as parents teach our kids and tell them things, they may not listen, but they listen to the voice of someone else. So the teachers may say something and goes one ear and out the other of the student, but that paraprofessional can be the one that reaches that student. And it's the same for our campus security. They keep us and everything in order on our campuses, and they also make those connections directly with the students. They build those relationships. You see kids come on campus, and that's the first one they want to go and tell, hey, I just did this in class. I've made this difference. You are going to be making those impacts and differences. So please really think about those decisions as you make cuts and what you're doing to impact the lives, because as I teach my students, this quote that I had from some time ago, but it's, let your lives be defined by the lives that you change. How are you going to be changing lives with the cuts that you make or the things that you keep? We may not have the funds, but we still have the students. Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Education, Dr. Noguchi and Cabinet. My name is Mary McGinn Murado, and I'm a second grade general education teacher at Kirshen Elementary with over 30 years in education. And I'm here to speak regarding the proposed cuts, specifically MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support at the elementary level, but from the perspective of a classroom teacher. Prior to COVID, our school attempted to levelize students by reading level within our grade span. I say attempted because our smallest groups of far below basic or most fragile learners, numbered at 17 to 21 students. Under the current MTSS model, with a coach and paraprofessionals, our higher performing at grade level or approximating grade level groups have an average of 12 students, while our most at-risk students are in groups of about 6 students. We're talking about kids that are still learning how to read. So the proposal I heard from you, Mr. Godot, of combining the at grade level students into mega groups, it is nothing short of completely alarming. Numbers matter. Let me say that again. Numbers matter, especially when providing research-based instruction designed to support literacy acquisition. The MTSS program, and I'm coming from the perspective of a classroom teacher. I'm not a coach. I see the effectiveness as a classroom teacher. The MTSS program reflects all 4 guiding principles as outlined by Modesto City Schools. This is something I feel really passionate about. We have a moral imperative to support EL students who must reclassify to take higher courses in junior high and high school. That starts at elementary. And we need them to be able to take those higher level classes to improve not just their school, but their life chances. And I need to emphasize how important the component within reclassification is their achievement measured either by DIBELS or the CAPS scores. MTSS is a long-term investment because returning to the past in which we were not effectively supporting reading through targeted intervention is not an option in the 21st century. Cutting the program will result in lower test scores as measured by DIBELS and CASP. We can't do that to our EL students. We can't do that to any students. MTSS, by providing effective research-based small group instruction, works to ensure that historically underperforming groups will be successful, right? That's one of our guiding principles. There is no research to support that district level management is having a direct impact on student achievement. For that reason, I'm respectfully imploring the board to keep the cuts away from the classroom and truly use a student-centered lens. Our community depends on us to serve our most at-risk students with diligence, skill, and love. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Noguchi and Cabinet and trustees. My name is Jennifer McGrath, and I'm the first Vice President of MTA. Before I even start, I just want to point out, it's really frustrating to see our name up in lights when you guys put the presentation up and say that these groups had input, and this has led to the decisions that we're making tonight. I apologize, I have a cold for my voice. I don't think there's any member of MTA leadership that would agree with anything that was up on those boards for the cuts. And to say that we had the input that we did not. And at a budget meeting, I specifically asked if we would be able to look at the data and to help make these decisions with the programs that would be cut. And we were told no, that was going to be strictly done by the cabinet and then delved down to us. So it's frustrating to see that. On October 11th, Dr. Noguchi was quoted by the Modesto Bee attributing the increase in scores to the instructional programs and targeted instructional coaching and individualized interventions, things like our MTS programs and our coaches. Your goal is still double-digit growth, yet these are the very programs and positions that are being threatened tonight. These cuts are a false narrative. No other local districts are making these cuts. Other districts managed to keep their COVID dollars away from FTE and critical programs so that this very thing did not happen. It's a false narrative followed by a false survey. A survey that never put administrators in district office positions on the list. It comes down to priorities and what you deem valuable. How can you say that you want to keep cuts away from students and not put all those newly created district office positions on the survey? How do you survey all administrators to see what programs they value, but you don't survey the hardworking teachers who actually use those programs in their classrooms, not one. How do you survey only select groups that most likely had little working knowledge of the groups that they were ranking in importance? I had a hard time taking it, which, by the way, I had less than 10 minutes to take it. I would encourage you to talk to any of the students that took the survey and ask them if they felt confident giving input in each program. How are those results even valid? How do you not sit with your labor partners to give actual input? Telling us what is already on the list is not getting our input. Giving us a survey that only lists things that we don't believe should be cut is not real input. Did you know in 2009 during the recession, each bargaining group sat down at a table and they all agreed to take a certain amount of cuts? That was true input. That didn't happen this time. So what are the other alternatives? Admins have increased by 14 positions, which is an 18% increase. Certificated administrative positions have gone from 16.5 million to 22.2 million from 2020 to now, which is a 36% increase, and yet enrollment has remained relatively the same. That was highlighted at the last board meeting by Yasser as well. The money that falls to the bottom each year is astronomical. I appreciate your commitment to putting dollars that fall to the bottom next year above that 5% to offset the cuts for next year, but why was that not done for this year? From 2019 to now, it averages over $5.4 million each year. In 2020, 14.5 million fell to the bottom. In 2022, 5.8 million fell to the bottom. In 2023, 24.7 fell to the bottom. Your reserves are double what's required. What sense does that make? This is the equivalent of me doubling my savings in my own home budget, but I'm gonna cut off my electricity bill because I can't afford it. It makes no sense. As of last year, you had $118,965,000 in reserves. You set aside an additional $17.9 million. Now, my brother is the mathematician in the family. He's over at Downey. But I'm pretty sure that the $17.9 million you set aside would have covered the $11 million in cuts this year and put a big dent into what we need to do next year. Administrators, district office positions, bloated reserves, and money that falls to the bottom each year are the best ways to keep cuts away from classrooms and students. Keeping cuts away from programs that affect students should be your priority, because I'm going to remind you, nowhere in the history of teaching, nowhere will you find a student that walked back onto campus and said, I owe everything to that senior director. And thank you, teachers, for staying out as late as you did. I think we had a little filibuster, and you know what? I appreciate you, and go home and get some rest.
Thank you. Okay, next. We have report on the Modesto City Schools. Oh, are there any discussions or questions from the board? After that, Vice President Maestas.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I've got some questions on several topics, and then a couple of comments. Can you outline the timeline needed for these? Because I know that there's ed code for when things need to be done, so then that way, you know, slips need to go out or things like that. I've been on the other side of cuts for several times in my career, and I just know that there's some ed code for timelines.
So I can start a little bit and frame it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Henderson. I know that there's some strict timelines relative to Teacher Association and CSEA. The goal with this particular process was to get it completed as early as possible for two reasons. One, That's what was messaged last year from the Board of Education, which came primarily from President Irvin, who requested that the earliest possible notification will help employees as they make decisions about employment. That's one. But secondly, we start our process on hiring for next year, next month, if I believe. But I'm going to turn it more over to Mr. Henderson.
That's correct. If you're talking about a statutory ed code timeline, deadline, the board needs to take action by March 15th in order to effectuate any reductions or eliminations for the following year. But there's a whole lot of reverse engineering and backwards mapping in order to get to that point. Based on the enrollment that the district heard the report on, we do staffing projections. All of that process starts now. We have identified timelines in December for retirements and resignations that help us project what our staffing needs are. Employee letters of intent. We hold staffing meetings in December. We'll start that process, and that includes declarations of overstaffing depending on what our projections are. So that can help identify positions that we have available for next year that may very well be something that we could put on hold and potentially hold for a position that's being reduced we're talking about this evening. In January, we began with managers identifying their categorical funding allocations, and they have to go through a whole process of determining whether or not they're going to continue to fund the same types of things out of their categorical budgets with their title money. If they make any changes, they have to go to school site council, and that's a process. There's also contractual procedures that are outlined in the collective bargaining agreement with classified staff with CSEA that requires a sequence of meetings to notify them of identification of reduced or eliminated positions, answering questions and clarification, and then going back again to notify them of a final list and then bringing that back to the board for action. So there's a lot of pieces to that. The statutory timeline, yes, but a lot of reverse engineering and backwards mapping in order to make sure that we meet it. And I get the comments related to what's the rush, but I think it's complicated and there are a lot of pieces to that. I would be far more concerned if we delay a process, because then the question would be to people who are directly impacted by a decision that we're making, why did you wait so long? Had I known sooner, perhaps I could have made an adjustment, applied for a different position, and not be left at toward the end of the year when many positions are already filled and there's not spots to be left.
Thank you for that. It would probably coming up in the next report, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but would that also give people time to then take advantage of the program that we're going to be hearing from in just a second?
I think that the timeline that we currently are working on, based on the board's action and then our process identifying the individuals who are affected, we have to go into detail about which positions are going to be impacted by the programmatic changes that were being discussed, and depending on what action the board takes. But yes, there will be time in the spring, even in toward the March, April timeline in order to effectuate the academy that's going to be presented.
All right. Thank you for that. So I got a couple of questions here. So the paras, how many of the paraprofessionals are, I know because I've had paraprofessionals in my classroom that were helping with English language learners and SPED students. How many of those are affected by what we heard about tonight?
MTSS has a role in working with our English language learners when it comes to early language development. It does not affect special education at all.
It does not affect special education. Okay. All right. That's a question. And what about kinder? Does that affect kinder? Does not affect kinder. Okay. And then how many additional coaches have been hired post-COVID?
Post-COVID, we had 7 to begin with as the sites prior to COVID. So it would be another 10, 15.
10 to 15 post-COVID.
Mhm.
And then, possibility of having some extra funds from the state if that happened, although I don't know what's going to happen because SPED, we know we get federal funding for special education. I don't want to get into topics that aren't part of this, but I'm worried that we're going to lose federal money, period. And I'm just worried. So
We do not receive close to the 22% that the federal government made the commitment with under the IDEA. So yes, the federal funding has been limited for many years,
could be limited more. That's what I'm saying.
potentially.
Which is got me a little fearful. But if we got a little extra money from the state, then you said that some of that money can go for the next year, this 26, 27, which I think you highlighted in this presentation that there were campus supervisors slated, another round slated for the next year, but those could possibly be saved with some of that money that we can get back. Is that a possibility?
If we have one-time dollars that come from the California for this year in one-time dollars, we can use it in a variety of spaces. We could come back, let's say we're awarded $4 million, come back to the board and we could ask you all, where would you like to put that in relationship to either the 11 million slated for next year, campus supervisors, MTSS? That could come back as a decision point for the board in the coming months.
Okay, so those are most of my questions, but I do have a comment. And I don't know, I'm just going to say the comment because it's on my mind. I look at input from the educational partners, and you exclude the AOL, and I see that professional development is on there, and instructional coaches are on there too. And I'm an instructional coach, and I don't get kids anymore telling me, yeah, that teacher made a difference in my life. They did when I was in the classroom, but now I'm not in the classroom. But I know that the 55% of AP students that passed their exam that didn't pass the previous year, the impact that I did with that teacher, those are the kids that they're not gonna remember me, but they'll remember their teacher. So it really, like, I get it. I've taken on more work this year too because we lost a couple of instructional coaches. Same thing, they were reducing time, reducing things, so we all picked up more load. We've seen a lot of other district staff that we've had to pick up load, so I get it. I get that it's rough to see the cuts because I've been part of it right now. But it's just disheartening when I see like comments like, what was this comment I saw? I'm gonna say it out loud because it's just frustrating to me. Instructional coaches can be reduced. They don't even help. Like, reduce instructional coaches, I have noticed not many of our teachers take advantage. It's just like, or we can cut back from professional development, but most professionals in any career have professional development. Like, that's what makes them better at their job. And so I don't know who's out there saying that, like, well, we don't need professional development, but I believe that, like, I need professional development as a board member, as a teacher, as an instructional coach, and I think that we need to continue to grow. So I really struggle with seeing cuts in professional development. I don't know if it's really not on here right now. There's not too much of it on here, but I just know as difficult as these decisions happen, it's hard for me to see instructional coaches go. It is. So that's all I have to say about that.
Trustee Daly.
So I have a few questions and a few comments. I appreciate Trustee Maestas asking about the timeline because I had that question as well. I am curious as to, I'm in a profession as a mental health provider where I am a lot of the time told that I have to do something and not asked as to whether or not it is going to be practical in the office. So I'm curious as to the reason that we didn't get more input specifically from the teachers.
Well, if we were to do a survey of, let's, not just teachers, everybody, right? The district, there's like 5,000 people. Our bargaining unit with the MTA is the largest, I believe, the largest group, not only in the classroom itself, but also in the different programs. What my fear was, is if we went out and did a survey of all the certificated would point to classified, and classified would point to certificated. So that's, well, I understand, and I heard something very different tonight, so I am encouraged by what I heard tonight. What the process that we have used in multiple decision-making over the last 7 years is what we mirrored here. It wasn't a survey with a list. It was a different input. It was a thought exchange, and I can have Mr. Rich share what that is. So rather than saying, here is a survey, you make the comments on it, it was, here's everything we spend dollars on with supplemental concentration and COVID. I think it was a little over 80 million. Everything was on the plate. Through your mind, what's working? What do you think we could adjust or modify? From everyone's viewpoint. You need parents' viewpoints, you need teachers, you need students, you need administrators, and that's also why we separated them out. And so we ended up with a little over 2,000 comments on that. Again, it's a different process, and I can have Mr. Rich share that if you'd like some more information on that.
No, that's all right. It gives me an idea of the thought process behind that. I do have a question in reference to, from my understanding, the digital school and one-on-one devices. Can you clarify what that is?
Yes, it would be the classroom technology, Chromebooks, and then projectors, anything they might need for delivery of content.
Okay, so by law, are we required to provide every student with a computer?
No, it's not a law, but
Okay.
it's the standard that we have for the district. And I have to say, probably high 90% of the school districts in the nation have a one-to-one since COVID.
Okay, again, just for my knowledge. Do we have, so on slide 21, the summary of employee reductions, do we have the actual percentage of decrease rather than including the vacancies?
Yes, Trustee Daly, give me 1 second. For classified, if we removed the 4 vacancies out of the, let me just go back to the slide. If we just looked at a count of 50 reductions for classified against the 2,157 employees there, I believe that would come out to about 2.3% reduction. If we looked at the certificated reductions, 22 minus the 5 current vacancies, that would give us 17. I believe that percentage would be under 1%. It would be 0.97%. And then for management, if we reduced the current 10 vacancies, that would be 7, and that would give us a 2.64 reduction of management.
Which means that it's 3.27% of the things that are going to impact our students. So I do have another question, and I don't know, did we set aside $19 million at some point in the budget?
It was about 6 years ago, the board then approved an additional 3%. And the way the 3% calculation works is it is based on our expenditures, so sometimes it varies between The last few years, it varies between 16 million and 18 million. That's the additional 3%. Just want to remind the board that back in June, when we adopted our budget, we have to have a 3-year multi-year projection. We removed that 3% from 26-27. Right now, it's only the 3% mandated reserve in order to maintain fiscal solvency at that time.
And is that 3% every single year, or is it cumulative?
It's once a year. It's calculated one time a year, so it doesn't accumulate, and it's one time. So once it's gone, we heard a savings account mentioned earlier. Just like once you use your savings account, you have to put it back in one time. So
Okay, So I was not on the board 7 years ago. I think most people know that. I was not in the decision-making process as to where the funds went. However, I am in the decision-making process as to eliminating those, which is extremely heart-wrenching to look at the people in the audience today that are going to be impacted. No matter what we do, we're not going to make everybody happy. So I do believe that student-centered is as far away from the classroom as possible. I would have been highly benefited in school to have many of these programs. So that's really huge. A lot of these students would not be able to make it without a lot of those programs, and those are directly the paraprofessionals and the teachers and the coaches. So biggest concern is we don't know for sure that we'll be able to maintain the small increases in academic achievement that we have so far, again, due to those people, when we cut some of these programs that are recommended on the list.
Trustee Lopez.
Okay, I have a couple of questions before I give my comments, but the first one is what happens when we're looking at vacancies? What happens to that funding that was allocated for those vacancies after the fact? So I know that once it sunsets, but where is that? What happens to that money that's not being used up, first of all?
Can you repeat that? Are you referring to the vacant positions that
Yes.
Mr. Godot has referenced in the report?
Yes, exactly. So we allocated funding for that. Obviously, if there's a vacancy, there's not being money spent, I hope. So what happens to that funding?
That funding is used so we don't have to reduce as much somewhere else, if that helps. And it depends on where the positions are funded. Were they funded out of one-time money? Because then that becomes a one-time savings for us, or was it part of our ongoing? If it's from an ongoing funded allocation, then those dollars become available ongoing, perpetually, year after year.
But in this case, it would be one time.
I don't think they're all one time. I'd have to go back and refer to the list. They're a combination of one time or expiring funds and ongoing funds that are already allocated ongoing, either through the LCAP with supplemental concentration grant funds.
Okay, I mean, I would think that if they're on this list, they would be one time if they're part of our COVID reductions. Which leads me to my second question is, how many of those positions that are on this list were created before COVID funding? Because I understand that the intent which was mentioned a lot, I will say, when we got those funding, was that we want to keep that away from positions because we don't want them to be we don't want to have this conversation further on in the future about, having to let go of individuals. So I understand that was very present. So how many of those positions that are currently being on that list were existed beforehand? Because then there should be a shift back to the funding source that they were a part of, right?
Mr. Let me try to explain something, because I think there might be a misconception out there. So while, yes, we needed to take one time out, we looked at everything in our system, and that included what we say is supplemental concentration. So those are positions that are funded out of the LCAP. That was before COVID, right? But because we wanted to take a look at all of our programs, $84 million worth, or 92, I can't remember which, all of our programs, some of the positions that you see on here were COVID, and some were positions that were programs that we saw either weren't showing the effectiveness or we couldn't determine the effectiveness. It was something that led us to say that was going to be reduced. So I'm going to use MTSS as an example. When I first got to the district 7 years ago, we had MTSS at 3 elementary schools. We then, because I saw that it was very promising, we went to 5 schools, very expensive program. COVID came, and we went to all 23 schools at a tune of $7.6 million. So that's ongoing dollars. Now, if we want to keep it, we're hearing it. That is a great program, and it is a great program. We need to figure out where to come up with, let's say we were funding $2 million of it. We need to figure out where to come up with $5.5 million ongoing, because it was done through COVID. What we can find for you, though, if you want us to take a look at an analysis of which ones were supplemental concentration, which ones were just COVID, and how they were funded, we can get that information. But remember, in this process, we're basically doing a deep dive on everything that we do to try to figure out what's working best for kids. Hopefully that helped explain some of your questions.
That does. And so I would love to see that that breakdown you mentioned. The third question is, we mentioned G230 earlier. So, and I also mentioned that I heard that the funding amounts were for G230 weren't all required there. So my question was, is G230 able to maintain the same productivity with the current ratio and the current amount of students with the cuts kept in mind?
So part of the analysis for the G230 program was looking at the number of students that were opting. It's a voluntary program, looking at the number of students that were voluntarily entering the program. The need is definitely, the data is showing there's definitely a reduced need for that program specifically, but we also have credit opportunities within the school day, e-learning periods, et cetera, that are showing a lot of promise, and the data is showing that the students are making significant progress in credit recovery in those programs. So yes, looking at the data, we believe that one comprehensive one G230 teacher at each comprehensive site, which is what we had pre-COVID, would sustain the level of need for that specific program. Again, there are other models and programs in our district that also support credit recovery in addition to G230.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Those were my questions, and just a comment is, I mean, we've been hearing about, I think last year when President Irvin mentioned about starting the process as early as possible, it was with that understanding that this was going to be tough and difficult conversations, and the best, I mean, well, I think the starting point should be that we wanted to have those conversations earlier. I think we're doing that, right? And so it comes, I believe, when we have things like the state budget that could change and fluctuate, it leads to having these conversations and this uncertainty going forward between now and what could have been our, could have been our deadline in March. And so I understand and I commend the commitment to that what Trustee Irvin had mentioned, and I believe that we're doing so, but I believe that there should be a hybrid of somewhere between November to March of how we're having these conversations. And earlier, Superintendent Noguchi mentioned about us having conversations of whether funding were to become available, how reallocating those two in the future for next year or for this year. And I believe that that conversation needs to be happening now, and and it needs to be happening, and it has to be stipulated. If we were to make a decision next week, it would have to be stipulated within that recommendation or with that vote that that it's not a set in stone. That as money comes available, there will be a change. But it also comes with that understanding from our folks of that's going to mean that there's going to be shifting, a conversation of always shifting of where's the money, or you know, if the money doesn't show up, that we might be ending up in the same conversation come March. So it's like, so we need that trust from you all as well, that that we're looking at the best interest, and I think that everyone on the board is doing that. That if we go down that path, they're still going to be hurt, and there's still going to be, we might end up in the same place, but that you have the commitment of our district and our board members that we're going to be looking now in the meantime what those solutions could be. So I'm just saying, like, if we were to go into that route, I would say that at least for myself, you will have that commitment. The other point, and I've always made it really clear, is whenever we have these conversations, you know, unfortunately, sometimes it feels like folks find out after the fact, and it seems reactive, right? And so, and I know that from the time that I came here, which was almost 7 years ago, to now, there's been that conversation. There's been growing conversations between all populations of our school district, but we must continue to do that and improve on that, and not sit on our laurels, and always understanding that we have to be guided by an equal amount of buy-in from all of our groups, whether that's teachers, students, parents. I know parents has been one of the ones that I've brought up the most, because I strongly believe in the partnership of parents in this process. So I know we've been growing, and we've been doing a really good job, but I urge and I want to commend at the same time that we continue to bring in as many people a part of the process, so that our work does not seem reactive but proactive.
Thank you. Trustee Marks.
Thank you. Thank you for all those comments. And this is a very painful process. And I know we're all in a great sense of just difficulty, because none of us wants to have to do this when the money's not there, and it just makes it harder. So I had a couple of questions. I wanted to understand better. Most of my questions were answered, but the G230, so we will still have a program at the sites with G230, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, just not as many teachers.
Pre-COVID, we had one G230 teacher at each of our 7 comprehensive high schools, plus the Pearson location was also staffed. I want to say 3 G230 teachers. The recommendation here would reduce us back to the pre-COVID G230 staffing.
Okay, thank you. Was trying to understand that better. And then I wanted to understand that MTSS as well. I know Dr. Noguchi said we had it at 3 schools and we increased it to 23 schools. So right now, where are we reducing? So are we reducing at all the schools? Are we reducing, do we have, like, I know there's 25 paras on the list.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if that was at each school, and how many, if we still have any there?
Yes, we do. The original allocation when we started MTSS pre-COVID, and if a site agreed, because MTSS is optional currently, a site can opt not to do MTSS, right. And there are a couple sites that have indicated they're not sure they're going to do it next year, which just basically increases whatever we reduce actually into other sites. But to answer your question, it started with a part-time coach, 2 to 3 paraprofessionals, depending on the school site size. So what this recommendation, and then once COVID hit, we went a full-time coach at every site, plus added additional paraprofessionals. This would eliminate the additional paraprofessionals that were added about 1.5 years after COVID, when we returned to in-person learning. and then reduce coaches, not at the large sites, but I would want to be very, very specific and targeted on who's split and where, depending on the smaller sites.
Okay, so on that, I know that was one of the priorities that that was put out by the educational partners that said that the MTSS program, that was high on the list to keep. And so I know it's expensive, as you said, but we were looking at which programs were the most effective with the dollars that we had, and we're making some cuts in some other programs. I noticed 3 million, hold on, 3.1 million in the other reductions. I didn't know if any of that, I know some of it is one time, I know it's one of them, but I didn't know if some of it could be used to help support some of the programs that are being cut, like MTSS.
I don't know if I'm getting to the to your question, but I do want to go back to what Trustee Lopez said. Senior Director Lamelli and I will continue to look for alternative funding sources so that MTSS doesn't potentially take the same hit. There's a grant that we can go for that we're in the discussion phases that would be a 5-year to where that could be written into that particular grant, assuming that we are awarded the grant. And then there's some other possibilities potentially in expanded learning, but we would have to engage our partners on that and make sure we have the budget to do it.
So the grant, so if it's a grant, it might be ongoing, or it could be one time. Is that
It would be
correct?
5 years. We would be looking at the
5-year
community
program.
schools grant.
Oh, right, community schools. Okay, that's helpful. Okay, yeah, this is just, I know I've done something like this before, and it's extremely painful because we look at people and say, this is very, it just makes our future really tough. And we know we want our students to do well. We know they've done well because you were there in these positions these last few years. And now it grieves our heart to cut some of these positions because it's gonna hurt everywhere. So I appreciate the comments. I don't know how to tell you that, but you did such a great job of sharing your heart, sharing your data, your statistics, your information that touched you and that you did in the classrooms, or the people that you supported in the classroom these past few years, that have really made an impact on your students. They're not just the students in the community, they're your students and our students, and together we're trying to make the best decisions possible. But I thank you for your time, for coming out tonight, for just loving on our little guys, because I know it's been a tough few years. So I just appreciate you, and whatever this turns out to be, I know you've given your heart and everything you had to be able to do make the difference that you've made. So I just appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Brown.
It's hard to have a meeting like this. When we talk about cuts, part of me goes into a mourning phase where I'm mourning every loss. And I have compassion and understanding for every individual whose position is potentially being cut. We feel it. And I want you all to know that you've been heard and recognized and appreciated tonight. Your signs that you're sharing with us tonight, what's the rush, kids count, save our students. I appreciate signs. It takes me back a week when I was standing on corners, waving signs, asking the public to please support Measure X. Your passion matches my passion and the passion that we all have for the students in our district. And I thank you for all that you do. I approach my comments with gratitude. Number one in my list of gratitude tonight is that we're not in a position like we were in 2008 when I served on Sylvan's board, when we were told that we had to make a 10% cut across the board in everything that our district spent money on. Those were terrible years, and many of you felt those cuts. You saw people forced out of positions, you saw programs cut, you saw everything that we could possibly reduce reduced, and we struggled to make do with what we had left. I'm grateful we're not there. I'm also grateful to everyone who has put the effort in to making the improvements that we're seeing in reading especially. And that I want everyone here to know that that has been a passion of our board from the moment that I came here. And I know it was there before. We wanted to see, we asked for, and we included in our goals every single year that we see the kind of improvements that we have seen the last 2 years. And we finally have seen that. And as I've heard the positions and the statements tonight, I want to ask something that Dr. Noguchi suggested. You suggested that as we find additional funds, that we focus those funds onto next year. And I plead with the district to allow the board to look at those findings of funds and be allowed to make a determination of when those can be applied. My vote will be to do it as early as possible. And my vote will also be to make sure that we come up with a list of priorities of things that we can buy back with found funds and buy them back just as quickly as possible and keep the progress moving forward to allow us to continue to improve reading scores, math scores, and overall improvements that we're making in education. This district, because we work so well together, is making tremendous progress. Let's not step backwards. We have to make cuts. We have to make difficult decisions. Not everyone will be happy with those decisions that we make, but let's keep provisions in place that allow us to buy back opportunities to keep the progress moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Mejia.
Yeah, I gotta say that there's so many things. I took so many pages of notes. I've been here kind of just taking it in, listening, and I meant listening, and I wasn't trying to come up with a response. I was trying to genuinely listen and write down everything. And I always speak from the heart. I mean, I've been to many different things, but I know this is so hard, and I feel like my gut is to look at everything and not take anything for granted, and go back and see where we can find or figure out a way to minimize the impact. But I also know I come from a family of 12 children, and we always make tough decisions. And I've taken some leadership things that, like, if you're in a leadership position, you are gonna come to this point. You're gonna come to this point in your life where you're gonna have to make those decisions as a leader, and it's gonna hurt, and you gotta take responsibility for that. But just to know that I personally do not take it lightly, the decisions that we make, but also will take the responsibility that it comes with when my vote comes on this cuts. But I know that you make a difference every day in my life. When you guys were saying out there, I remember I'm an immigrant. I had migrant education come to my house and read to us and stuff like that. So I think of some of the stories that you come with that, and I know what it means. But I also know what it means to make those tough decisions. So know that it's not falling on an empty, but your words are here, are connected, but it's tough for me to give all my reactions, my heart, and everything is going really fast and thinking of everything, but trying to listen at the same time and not to think of what am I gonna respond, just taking it in. So just know that that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I wanna look at everything and really evaluate. But also at the end of the day, there is gonna be some tough decisions, and I know families like mine, like many, are gonna be impacted, but just know that it is not taken lightly, and appreciate all that you do every day. So thank you very much, and and I hope that, that we continue to work to figure something out. And I agree with a lot of the comments. I want to say, same comments some of my other board members said, but I know we have limited time. But thank you so much for being here and expressing your heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm gonna go because you two are double take. Yes. I just want to say, and and I echo maybe our board members as well, but I'm gonna come from a place of empathy because I was there. I was there, and it pains me to see because I'm looking at the possibility of people who were once my colleagues in the district. Now I'm on the other side and looking at the same situation back in 2012 when my job was actually cut, and I don't think this was this kind of outpouring amongst the board, except for probably Trustee Marks and a couple others. But I mean, I went through it. I went through it. It got cut and hit the streets. And what I say, and when the superintendent said I advocated for early notice, where we are now, was because had I had that, my transition would have happened earlier before the layoffs happened. Because I had several job opportunities, but had I known my job was on the line, I wouldn't have negotiated or attempted to negotiate salary with those other jobs that I had. I would have just took them. And one was at Stan State. And I did not take the job because I felt on the pay scale was a little, a lot lower than what I was getting here in the district. So I didn't. And I had that in January. They offered me that in January. And then in March, man, they came out with it. They hit me with one. And so I went through all of that stuff, to the point where they're coming to take your house, going on unemployment. I had never had a dime of unemployment. I've been working since I was 14. If you look at my Social Security printout, it goes back to when I was 14, my paper route with the LA Times, and here it is. Now I got to apply for unemployment. I got to support a family. My wife got laid off at the Salida district because they cut their Even Start program. They didn't apply for funding again. And so here it is. I'm cast out there, and I felt nobody cared here, at that time. It was just like, hey, it is what it is. And I don't want that to prevail here. I want to make sure that we collectively look at all the options, all the ways that we could save positions. When you're talking about going close to the classroom, you're talking about looking at reading that's increasing because we have these MTSS positions. To use a quote, we're going forward. We should be going forward, not backwards. And so I want to continue to, look at things very intently and diligently and prepare. Our next presentation about Academy, there was none of this back in 2012. It just got cut. And, that was it. I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to mitigate losing every staff member, But like I said, the classroom, teachers, paraprofessionals, those are those direct, people who are making that difference. I hear students all the time, saying how they're getting help. And then when you see the results, how do we compromise results? How do we compromise results? Because we shouldn't be compromising results. We should be increasing results. And so when I see, the position we're in, it's hard choices. And that's what we're elected to do. But make hard choices when there's in those tough times, but also make those good choices in those times with light at the end of the tunnel. And so I just want to, just end with, I definitely empathize. And from my perspective, I mean, I don't want anybody to ever go through what I went through when it could have been avoided, because I was told that my job was a compromise as a manager with the CTA and CSEA. And well, I don't know if they rolled the dice or whatever to appease them, saying, "Oh, we got to get rid of some managers," and so if we're going to get rid of some of those employees, and that's how it played out. I don't know how true that was, but I know that was told to me, and so here I want to make sure that we're transparent, that we're doing everything within our power to minimize the impact on people's lives. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're dealing with. And yes, kids count. Kids count. And like I said, nobody should have to go through that. And so, again, my heart is definitely with everyone, whether on the list or not on the list, because that's what family does. We have to look at this from a family perspective. And we're all family. If you're in the MCS family, we're all family. So with that being said, Vice President Maestas.
Yeah, I don't want to talk after that. No. I really want to know what's our next steps, because we've all shared where we are coming from, and I know we have another meeting scheduled. Excuse me, meeting scheduled for a vote. But I think there are some recommendations that have come out of tonight, and so I'm wondering what the timeline is for next steps on what the district is going to do then to come back for us to then make some informed decisions. I think you heard from all of us. So I would like to know about that. I have a really quick question, actually. In this table that says management, are any of those management positions classified management, or are they all certificated?
Both.
Both? Okay. Because I do want to push back on one thing, because it really just kind of like struck me. There are management positions that are very important to the classroom. We heard one today from a IT in IT, right? Yeah, that is super important to the students' well-being in the classroom, and leaders make a difference too. So I've never been a man, like I don't want to be an administrator. Never been an administrator. I've been a teacher, a coach, some connected to the classroom. But I just know that when I've had a good administrator, our school has done better. And when I had a bad administrator, our school was not good, in a good place. So really good leadership is really, really important, as well as having really great teachers and really great paraprofessionals. Question is, what are the next? I know there's a slide on next steps, but you've gotten some recommendations.
So let me
Yes.
speak to that. So we will take your feedback and your input, from your comments today, come back next Monday, and provide you recommendations, and hopefully land this plane, if you will. There are definitely some considerations that we can take a look at in making some decisions, and that's the next steps, in addition to all the next steps that play out once that decision is made.
And I appreciate President Irvin's desire to have it early enough for people, but a week is not a long time. And so if you can get us the information as soon as possible so we can dig into it, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Dagger.
Okay, Student Trustee Dagger.
Yeah, I just wanted to approach this a little bit from a student perspective. My first meeting was really only about like 3 months ago, so kind of feel like I've been thrust into a war zone a little bit. And there's a lot that I don't really know. There's a lot I need to learn. I think there's a lot I need to think about. I think it's because of that I really do appreciate the public comments that we had today. A lot of you all of you told stories that really touched me, like the ones that were shared about Prop 28. You know, I heard the story of the senior from Grigori High who contemplated suicide, and who was helped by teachers and campus supervisors and counselors, and that really does make an impact on me. And I think it's also made an impact, of course, on Student Representative Gupta. I think genuinely, if there's somebody where those kinds of stories are going to make an impact on them, it's going to be students. So I just wanted to really make it known, like, thank you very much for putting your opinions out there, even if those stories were difficult to tell, because I think they really do make an impact on us as student board reps, and that's definitely something that's gonna, you know, encourage us to get more information and to genuinely make an impact as much as we possibly can on all of your guys' lives. So thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, there was one last thing that I had. It'd be nice to have the possibility of having the percentage. I know someone mentioned about the campus supervisors and, you know, fights and things. If we could have the data for their contacts and you know, a fight breakup, any type of situation that they're involved in on campus, if we document that so we can see, wow, they intervened in such and such, you know, X amount of fights or potential fights or thefts or confiscations of illegal items or, you know.
So President Irvin, I appreciate the need for that request, but I don't know that that's anywhere in our system. We've got lots of data to say lots of things about attendance, suspension. We could pull the number of fights at any one school, and then we'd know that they were part of that. But to calculate the interactions that they have each and every day by the number of campus supervisors that we have, that data is not available.
All right. Catching kids vape and all that kinds of stuff.
Yep,
I
all
mean,
that stuff.
I'm
You're
just
right.
saying if there's a way. I know we document a lot of stuff.
We do.
You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying it might be some helpful and useful, you know, data to have in the future, to really understand how integral they are on a campus, you know. And so we see a job description, but a lot of times here on the board, we don't see the job every day, you know. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just throwing some out there, yes. And I know they do great work. Like I say, when I'm out on the campus, I don't know how many altercations or potential altercations I've seen them intervene in without laying a hand on them, you know, just by their presence and the respect that students have for them, de-escalate situations, you know. So, you know, I don't know. And also, it'd be good to have a little follow-up on Mr. Arvizo, you know, to see, you know, what type of impact that's going to have on students directly as well. So that's all I have. Okay, that takes us.
So President Irvin, there's
Yes.
been a request for a short
break? Short break? Would 5 minutes do you good? Or 10 minutes? All right, 5 minutes. Okay. We're here at B2. Report on Modesto City Schools Academy. Mr. Nago.
Just get situated. Good evening, President Irvin, Board of Trustees, Student Board Representatives, Dr. Noguchi, and Cabinet. My name is Daniel Nago, and I am the Classified Professional Development Coordinator, and I'm going to give a report on Modesto City Schools Academy. And I recognize that this is a very difficult time for everyone, and it's natural for people to feel a range of emotions that we're all experiencing tonight. And I hope that tonight's report could address and meet and give someone some hope tonight. That's my hope. So the purpose of this presentation is to share the purpose of the MCS Academy. And within the academies, we have 3 different pathways, and that's particular to the bargaining units, classified, certificated, and management. And we'll talk about next steps. And just to take note that the academies that I'll be talking about, or rather pathways I'll be speaking about this evening, some of these have already been ongoing in our district, and we've been offering some of these pathways already. Our Modesto vision and our MCS vision, our collective why, is that every student graduates with the skills, knowledge, and character traits essential to thrive and contribute to society. And as we invest in the MCS Academy and its pathways for staff, and I believe in return this would contribute to our collective why as we continue to invest in all of our employees. In our district goal alignment, we got a goal alignment 2, that we would provide a high quality professional development to support the MCS vision, and goal 5 to hire, train, retain, and high quality staff with the emphasis of increasing diversity. And the purpose of the academy, we're looking to provide employees with opportunities to enhance their skills. We're looking to support the recruitment, the training, and retention of high quality staff, and prepares the staff for career advancement in the evolving district needs that we have, and also to foster a culture of excellence, ensuring employees are ready for future opportunities within Modesto City Schools. And there are PD opportunities, and if these are to be completed outside of a individual's working hours, those hours would apply to the PD incentive that we currently offer in our district. And in addition to that is participants will receive a certificate of completion at the end of this pathway, and will be given PDs or professional development workshops to help them for best practices in applying and putting their application through EdJoin, and also interviewing skills for these potential positions. First off, I would like to show here our classified pathways, and we have our pathway to paraprofessional. These are anyone that is not a paraprofessional, who is a classified staff who is interested in becoming a classroom paraprofessional. And as you see there, it's listed as TK, Kinder, various ranges of our special ed classrooms, and also really looking at ECE as well, that is included in that. A classified to certificated pathway, this is a pathway that we have for classified staff members who are interested in earning their teacher credential, and we have a funding of $4,800 per year for that money to be expensed by June of 2026, but we actually got an extension for that the state sent down, so there's still more money for that to assist individuals with student tuition. We have our bus operators, a pathway that we also offer. This has been going on for many years within our district, and as the board could recall, not too long ago, the board made the decision to take on the transportation for special ed transportation, so there will be a need for more bus drivers, and we have our in-house program that Stella Adams leads there. And then we also have our clerical pathway that we're looking at all clerical positions from our receptionist, if you would, all the way to an administrative assistant, a wide variety of clerical pathway opportunities offered. We also have our translator pathway. This is for the MCS Academy that we would prepare potential TC, which is a typist clerk 2 or typist clerk 3, giving them training and professional development around verbiage for SPED, child welfare and attendance, student support services, and the vocabulary to prepare those individuals if a position comes open for them. And if you remember, towards the end of last year, we launched our first Classified Leadership Academy. We had 36 individuals. We presented to them a certificate of completion. We are in our second cohort of that. We have about 36 individuals part of that Classified Leadership Academy to help and develop classified individuals and classified managers to develop their leadership skills for them. And lastly, for the classified pathways is the ECE careers. Modesto City Schools has partnered with UC Merced to provide the opportunity to earn 12 ECE credits there. And this is no cost to the participant, and the cohort consists of 4 core ECE classes, and that individual will earn the ability to be a paraprofessional in the ECE world. There's special needs, special requirements there for the ECE world. Then for our certificated pathway, we have our teacher induction that MCS certificated staff participate in a 2-year program to clear the credential, and candidates are provided with one-on-one mentor support, and also they attend regular meetings to help them complete this coursework. Our aspiring administrators, this program is designed to support teachers and other certificated staff members in becoming leaders at their sites, and also a pipeline of leaders from the classroom to administration. And this includes 4 days of professional learning and mentorship throughout the school year. For our management pathway, we have the administrators induction. This MCS certificated admin staff participate in a 2-year program as well to clear their credentials. Candidates are provided one-on-one mentor support to help them complete their coursework. New principals equips the new leaders within Modesto City Schools with essential skills in instructional leadership and staff management, but also our future principals. These are individuals to be part, our vice principals, assistant principals that are wanting to become a future principal someday. And then lastly, we have something that we've been doing for about 3 years now. This is our student pathway. We have graduating high school seniors who would like to be a paraprofessional. Tanya Jimenez leads this work alongside with me, and we have individuals, graduating high school seniors that are interested in being a paraprofessional that we've been offering. Right here is just a screenshot of the MCS Academy website. Just about everything that I shared will live on the website. It would show the program, the pathway. It would show the cost or the value. When I say cost, many of the things that we're offering has no cost. But our bus driver academy, our pathway has very minimal cost, but there is most of that gets reimbursed once the driver completes all the required certifications and courses. For the 24-25 reduction opportunities, this is really, we want to support employees throughout the staffing reduction process that are affected, those affected individuals, and we'll have the opportunity to participate in the training programs designed to assist them in applying for the new positions within our school district. And for the current school year, special consideration will be made for on-the-job training and part of the program, and MCS will make a good faith effort to provide release time for current employees, including job shadowing, so it gives them an opportunity to see what is out there. Our next steps is to evaluate our current offerings and work to develop a program that could be engaging within the workday. We're also going to work with CSEA and MTA on agreements and begin offering courses in the springtime that for the affected employees, and then continue to evaluate the effectiveness of individual pathways that we have. And that concludes my presentation. President Irvin, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your report. Are there any comments from the public? Ms. Peterson? Thank you, Mr. Nagel.
Board trustees, Dr. Noguchi, Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, sorry about that. cabinet members, student representatives. This particular item is very close to my heart. I appreciate the time that has been taken by the district to take, I hope, some of the suggestions we offered, but I know some of the things are already in the pipeline, but take those and really run with them to make them viable and to be meaningful help for our affected classified, certificated, and management employees within the district. My very first year with the district, I got a pink slip. I was a para, pink slipped. Next year, I was a para, pink slipped. I know what it's like to not know if you're actually going to end up with a job the next year. And so, as President Irvin has said, I wanted our members and anyone who's affected to have the most notice and be able to prepare for their future. And I appreciate the time. I can't even name everybody who has been involved in the process because I don't know who all has been involved, but I do appreciate the effort that the district is making to retain our current employees and to create a pathway for them. I wrote yay on here and hope. I did have one idea though I shared before, but I wanted as a possible path for computer techs. We're always getting new Tech 1s and new, anyway, an opportunity in that direction. I feel kind of scattered, but I think it's because this means so much to me. A really, truly good faith effort on the part of the district to provide for those who are already part of this MCS family. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the board? Oh, another? Oh, I'm sorry, Brett.
Sorry. Thank you. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I do think this is pretty cool. And just a kind of quick suggestion, I myself started off as classified in the district, left and came back and became a teacher here. So I kind of know how that feels. My wife also used to be classified in the district. She's now a counselor in Stockton. So her process of even trying to come back to the district is hard because there's not very many positions. And you know, she's pretty new at it. So she's working her way. She wants to come back. But I noticed one thing that may not be aware or that maybe we could look at with aspiring administrators on slide 10. I don't know if there's maybe a program to help with the administrative credential, maybe in some way for training for that, the actual credential itself, because I know that's a roadblock for some teachers that want to become administrators. I think the state started actually offering it for free to take the exams to get the administrative credential. Just food for thought, maybe a training program to pass those tests and get those credentials, I think would be kind of cool. So thank you so much. Sorry for taking your time.
Thank you, Brett. Board, questions, comments? Trustee Brown?
Yes, just a curiosity. How much does it cost the district to provide these services?
I'll have Mr. Rich answer that question for us.
I'll stumble through and pretend like I know the answer to that question. I can get that for you. It crosses a wide range of things, so I don't have that number off the top of my head. But and then the idea that we're going to offer an opportunity for those affected for on-the-job training, that would be an added cost in regards to maybe a substitute in their position for that day as we do some of those things. So there will definitely be some costs associated with it, but we feel like it's a pay it forward type of cost, and it's well worth it.
Thank you. Then another question is it anticipated that these pathways will be ongoing? you know, it looks like we have a definite need this year. We'll have a definite need next year. Is it something that we will evaluate and determine in the future if we need to continue? But it seems like a great opportunity for advancement to train and hire within for future growth that is available to all of our employees.
Yes, and that's something, some of these program, pathways rather have been ongoing for a while, like our senior to paraprofessional, our pathway to paraprofessional, our certificated pathway has been going for 3 years now. So those are ongoing. So we foresee to continue to grow this and let it become more of a robust academy for all of our employees within our district.
And I really appreciate and hope we can expand on creating opportunities for graduating students to be able to work within the district. So I think that's great.
Yes, thank you.
Trustee Daly.
So thank you for sharing this report and sharing the how of how we plan to maybe reclassify or retrain individuals to remain employed, because we want to work to see no unemployment from this. I'm curious because I don't know with the change, so I always get it, I have a hard time remembering this. So with the certified, the teachers, as they transition to new positions, they are likely going to keep their salary because of the classifications of each, I'm trying to keep it in my mind, of each of their pay schedules. Is that accurate?
It could, depending on the position, but if a job embedded coach position is a 195-day position and they go back to the classroom, which is a 185 and on a different salary schedule, there could be a slight reduction in total compensation based on a shorter work year because our job embedded coaches have 10 more days. So, you know, at a per diem times 10 days, it is a higher compensated position. It depends on who the individual is, what position they're in, and what position they might matriculate to.
Okay, so then it would be similar then to the classified employees who may move from position to position and have an income change. Okay, so that was primarily my question, then I just have some validations. Thank you again, everybody in the audience, for sharing their stories and sharing their hearts. I agree with that. Thank you, Cabinet and Dr. Noguchi, for all the work that you have done and will do in making these difficult decisions. These are extremely difficult. I also want to validate, though, that Monday night after we make that decision, I will go home and I will have my job and I will have my income and it will not change. And that may not be the case for some people.
Thank you. Trustee Mejia?
First of all, thank you for the presentation. I'm super excited that you're having this. But also, one of the questions I meant to ask earlier, I know people as teachers retire and people do that. Will some of the teachers in those positions, if they happen to be cut, would they be able to take up those positions? Would they be able to apply or have a lead or be prioritized to take on positions just in case there's retirements? So like that, 'cause I feel it's important, like acknowledging what Jolene just said, that having a job, like if you lose, but you're able to fit into a different place, maybe not the ideal, but can you say a little bit about that? Is there, like, you have an average of what happens on a yearly basis for those folks that retire, and then who will take those positions? Can you say a little bit about, I mean, that's been in my mind for a little bit.
Yeah, so for example, by the end of the first Friday in December is a deadline we have for early notification for an incentive for people to let us know if they plan to retire or resign by the end of the school year. That, along with our staffing projection, helps us identify our needs for the next year. So with these timelines, we'll begin to build an idea of what our position needs will be at all of our school sites for the following year. And the focus for the HR department will be to look to prioritize the placement of individuals displaced by this process into certificated positions for which they're credentialed as an option. So that is part of the process and procedure calculation that we'll be doing. is to, insert them in a location and spot in the sequence so that there's an opportunity for placements prior to eventually any people having to actually be laid off. So yes, and we're just watching the data, how many people have indicated already, or the numbers typically increase a little bit as we get closer to December, and we'll be monitoring that on a regular basis. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that answers perfectly. Partly out of the passion of the folks that, keeping them in front of students would be ideal, just with the passion that they spoke tonight and some of the stuff. So if it wasn't in the ideal position that they were at, but with students, I think we want that. We want passionate, committed individuals in front of students, even if it's not in the capacity that they are in right now, would be the ideal, just based on the passion that and there's testimonies that they said tonight, and based on some of the feedback from students and some of the folks that spoke. So thank you for that. That brings a little more clarity. Thanks.
Thank you. Student trustee Gupta.
Okay, I know it's late. I just have one singular comment, no questions. So I kind of viewed your presentation from like a student perspective, so I'm kind of biased. So I know the main purpose of the program is for like retaining teachers as employees, which is amazing. But in my perspective, it's not only for performing this function. It's also creating more robust teachers who perform at higher levels. And the result of that is students who perform at higher levels. And I'm pretty sure like both me and Ahmad can attest to this, that when we have like teachers performing at a higher level, students score better on tests like AP tests and state testing. So just overall, I really appreciate the effort to continue progress in our district amidst these budget cuts. So thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yes, I got the last comment. I just want to, in hindsight, or playing now, Tuesday night quarterback, could we have utilized that COVID money to stay for a golden handshake for retirement? Just a question. I don't know.
I'd have to defer to Mr. Zierli on whether or not the purpose of those funds could have been used for that purpose, but we've done what's called a supplemental early retirement program incentive just a few years ago. So when you do that, there's an evaluation of the return on that investment, the cost-benefit analysis, third-party analysis, and my guess is it's still too early since we've done it last to be able to realize the financial benefit of that.
Beginning in the fall of 2020, we were receiving funds routinely for 3 years, and they all had a desired impact. But some of those, none of the funds, as I recall, specifically would have said retirement incentives for your employees. Remember, the funds were designed to respond to the pandemic, help us respond to the pandemic. And we've heard tonight that the many different ways that our staff has had to respond to the pandemic. But what the funds did allow us to do is we were already utilizing some of the areas, for instance, cleaning and disinfecting. We already had a staff of very trained professionals doing the daily cleaning. That was allowable, and so we could have used those dollars, the COVID funds, to pay for those staff, and then freed up money to do a retirement incentive. But there was nothing in particular allocated to us for a retirement incentive for existing staff.
Okay. That's in hindsight, that's all. All right. We'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Properly moved by Trustee Marks and seconded by Trustee Mejia. All in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Meeting adjourned.